questions? Okay, let's start with you.
Thank you. Robbie Corey-Boulet with AFP. On Ethiopia, I wanted to ask, why did it take the AU so long to engage in mediation? What obstacles did it face domestically trying to get that underway? And what steps is the AU taking now to facilitate trust between the two sides as they try to push for a ceasefire? Thank you.
Je suis Renaud Dingemnayal de la République du Tchad. La République du Tchad vit une situation exceptionnelle de par une transition apaisée d'une part et aussi par son implication dans la lutte contre le terrorisme. Et durant ce sommet, le Premier ministre du Tchad a plaidé auprès de l'Union africaine afin que son plaidoyer aille au niveau de la communauté internationale pour que le Tchad bénéficie d'un appui financier pour faire face à la transition. Peut-on savoir quelles résolutions les chefs d'État et du gouvernement ont-ils pris par rapport à cette requête du Tchad?
My name is Coletta Wanjohi. I'm here for the SABC. Commissioner, if you could kindly tell us what discussions have been had by the heads of state, especially on the unconstitutional changes of government. The leaders were talking about a new peace and security architecture. What are they suggesting to kind of prevent this? Thanks.
Hello, Commissioner. Giulia Paravicini from Reuters. On Ethiopia, why was Ethiopia not on the agenda, considering the situation? Do you think the EU has done enough to try to bring an end to the conflict? And are you optimistic about this peace process, or like national dialogues or attempt to reach a ceasefire, considering there's fighting still ongoing as we speak at the border between Afar and Tigray? Thank you.
One more question, then we can allow the Commissioner to respond to the question. Please wait. Okay, one more question.
Okay, Samir Omar from Sky News Arabia. My question is about the proposal for summit to facing terrorism. Is it acceptable or not, and when?
Okay. I think we can.
Thank you all for coming and for being patient. Please understand that AU summits are usually the first day devoted to peace and security on the continent. So you please bear with me. I couldn't make it as scheduled earlier on. Before I go into the questions, and I missed the second question, and I will go back to the second question later on, but I want to emphasize 4 critical issues that relate to the political governance, peace, and security on our continent. One, as you all know, is the phenomenal expansion of terrorism, violent extremism, and radicalization. All our regions now have to deal with this scourge. 2, some people have called it the resurgence of unconstitutional changes of government. As we speak, 4 of our member states have been suspended: Guinea, Mali, Sudan, and Burkina Faso. 3, we have complicated political transitions, meaning we have to tread carefully and engage our member states back to constitutional order. Finally, the impact of COVID-19 on the work we do in the peace and security sector, indeed on our polity as a continent. So I want to emphasize this before I go into the questions. First one, why did it take AU a long time to mediate in the Ethiopian conflict, in northern Ethiopian conflict? That is not true. Immediately, the crisis started in November 2020. The African Union swung into action. Indeed, my predecessor and the department have been on top of this issue. There was no way the AU will not engage on such a situation, given its exact location in Ethiopia. What you see is also different from what you need to know. The point is that I must emphasize that engagements, quiet diplomacy, shuttle diplomacy may not be usually reported. I took office as commissioner on the 15th of March. Till today, I can count at least 6 times that I engaged directly with the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. But it goes unreported. And when you see the tweets, they will not give you the innermost issues that you see. So I want to assure you that we have been engaged from day one on this matter. The chairperson has issued a number of statements speaking to Madam Salewak, the President of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and of course to Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed. Let me say, because I expect a lot of questions on Ethiopia, 3 things you need to know on Ethiopia that we have stated from day one. And to today, those issues are still relevant. One is the African Union has continuously called for comprehensive, inclusive, all-embracing, immediate, unconditional ceasefire. And you can quote me on that. That's a number 1 priority from day one, and still remains a top priority for the peaceful resolution, amicable resolution of the conflict in northern Ethiopia. 2, guaranteeing of humanitarian access to the areas in need, based on our international obligations, international humanitarian law and international human rights law. 3, which I believe is the most important and relevant to your question, sir. It is that only a political solution. We asked the Commission, from Chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat, to our department, we have re-emphasized the need for a political solution that is premised on national reconciliation and dialogue. Only face-to-face engagement with all parties will be the way to go in the mediation component. It is in this context that, as you are aware, that the chairperson appointed former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, as High Representative for the whole region, knowing that Sudan, Somalia, South Sudan, and Ethiopia had been on the map of making sure we engage and we strengthen our mediation, particularly peace, humanitarian mediation, for the benefit of the people of Ethiopia. So these 3 flagship engagements, continuously all rolled into one, remain relevant for the work that we do in the Commission on Political Governance, Peace and Security. And most importantly, the engagement is now for us as the department to also mobilize full support for the initiative of the government of Ethiopia on the National Dialogue Commission. And I want to assure you that His Excellency, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, is engaging with members of this commission. And as I speak to you, he has made numerous trips to Mekele. He will be leaving for Kombolcha, Afar, Amara regions during this week. We are all clamoring for peace to return to Ethiopia, the headquarters of our union. So I believe it is important for me to emphasize this. The African Union is fully seized of this matter, and we have taken the necessary requisite resources, energy, our experts in the Department of Mediation, in the Division of Mediation and Dialogue, and our political analysts, and indeed, in the next few days, we are going to fully back up the Office of the High Representative with experts from the African continent to ensure that mediation and dialogue will serve as the pivot for peace to return to the northern part of Ethiopia. It is also important for me to go to the fourth question, which is about why Ethiopia was not on the agenda of this summit. Let me assure you that every conflict situation was on the agenda of the summit. Indeed, 32 of our leaders, heads of state and government, intervened on the dual agenda item of the report of the activities of the Peace and Security Council for the year 2021 and the state of peace and security in Africa. So the 5 regions of the continent, from the north to the south, east, west, central, were all covered. Horn of Africa, Sahel region, the maritime security, the issues about women, peace and security, the role of child protection, the role of the youth, every related issue, including partnerships for peace and security, were covered under this first item. And secondly, as you know, the African Union Master Roadmap for the implementation of the silencing the guns by 2030 was also debated. So our leaders were able to give us their direction, strategic direction and guidance on the next steps when it comes to peace and security. So when you see the agenda of the summit, you will not see the names of any of the conflict situations, but you will see 2 critical components, which I've stated: the activities of the Peace and Security Council, as well as the state of peace and security in Africa. Coupled with it is the report on the implementation plan for the Silencing the Guns Master Roadmap. These are standard agenda items, and no specific mention of any conflict situation is there. But in the report presented by His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is the current chair of the Peace and Security Council for the month of February, he reeled out the state of peace and security in Africa, and I was also privileged as commissioner to complement his presentation with more details and, of course, the institutional priorities of the department. So I believe I've answered the 2 questions on Ethiopia, but let me quickly go to the
a brief follow-up on Ethiopia. You mentioned point 2 was guaranteeing humanitarian access to the areas in need. As we speak, it's been nearly 2 months since the last trucks managed to get into Tigray. Have you urged Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to reopen any routes to let aid back into Tigray?
I want to assure you that we are certainly engaging with all parties. And what I've told you, the 3 points I've made, are reflected in the statement issued by the chairperson of the Commission in late August. And that's why I re-emphasize that we still stand by that today. And I want to assure you that Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed reassured us of the commitment of the government of Ethiopia to ensure that humanitarian access is guaranteed. So I've taken these 2 points, and let me now quickly go to the unconstitutional changes of government. Every African leader in the assembly has condemned unequivocally the pattern of, or the resurgence, or the cycle, or the wave of unconstitutional changes of government. But let me use this opportunity to say critically that the media should give the African Union in its entirety a lot of heads up. There is no other international intergovernmental body that suspends its members for undemocratic tendencies. The African Union has this novelty that must be acknowledged, that the African Union is a hub for the protection, the guarantee, and the defense and safeguard of democracy and its credentials. The Lome Convention, as you are aware of, the African Charter on Defense, Elections, and Governance, the Constitutive Act itself, and most importantly, the protocol establishing the Peace and Security Council, all frown at military takeovers. So what is important is that our leaders have condemned in no uncertain terms that the African Union, the regional economic communities, will not tolerate military coup d'etat in any form. No justification. And that is why you do your research. At no time in the history of the African Union have we had 4 countries in one calendar year, in 12 months, being suspended. Mali, Guinea, Sudan, and latest, Burkina Faso. And they use this occasion, this opportunity in their deliberations to condemn the attempted coup against the government led by President Mbalo of Guinea-Bissau between 23rd and 24th of January 2022. So this assembly has placed it on record that they have zero tolerance for military adventurists. It is important that the media should know that none of our leaders is in any way justifying the trend that we're seeing. Rather, they are all collectively, wholesomely united in the same language of unequivocal condemnation of unconstitutional changes of government. This is in line with the principles of the African Union, and the department has continued to work towards this end. What is important is that we are going to undertake a reflection through the Peace and Security Council with stakeholders, experts in constitutionalism, the rule of law, elections, and democracy from around the continent to probe the essence of these principles and the trend we are witnessing. Why this trend? But one thing I can tell you is that we have noticed an intrinsic link between governance and weak security apparatus structures. The Sahel must not be turned into a hotbed of unconstitutionalism. And I want to assure you that we will do our best in our department to make sure that we get the leaders of our continent to continue to speak as one against this scourge. It's a scourge because it's going to lead to many unpleasant impact. in that respect, let me also add to the question about new architecture. I didn't get it, but we are integrating the architectural plans we have in the area of political governance and peace and security. As you are aware, we operate the African Governance Architecture, AGA, and also operate previously in 2 departments, the African Peace and Security Architecture. We are standing by with the mainstreaming of political governance into peace and security endeavors. There is no way we can have lasting, sustainable, enduring peace on our continent without effective governance. And we believe that effective governance will lead to peace dividends. So we are starting at the grassroots of promoting that governance, collaborating with the APRM, collaborating with a number of structures already within the AU system, including the AGA platform. And I want to assure you that that partnership will yield fruit because it's a partnership that is multi-stakeholder, multidimensional, and focuses on the needs of our people. But we can't do this without our member states. And that is why the member states will continue to be the shining light when it comes to good governance. So the architecture we plan is that mainstreaming of the 2 programs to have them speak to each other more often, and the intrinsic linkages will be brought to bear on the impact for what we call democratic dividends. I believe the 5th question is around the extraordinary summit. I want to assure you that the Assembly has decided that it is important for leaders of the African Union to engage on counterterrorism as well as the impact of unconstitutional changes of government at a special session, an extraordinary summit that we believe we hold in May 2022 in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea. We are ready for this summit, and we are going to put all our technical resources to ensure the success of this summit. What do we expect from this summit? We expect, again, strong leadership that will reinforce our response collectively to the existential threat of terrorism, violent extremism, radicalization, and bad governance. So this is what we plan to do, and we hope from that we'll come up with strategies to fully energize our whole process. We're already doing this. The African Union has a center for decades now in Algiers that has been working in the research and study of terrorism. But now is the time to put this to practice and implement action plans that will be successfully impactful on the rest of our continent. From Cabo Delgado in Mozambique to Libya, we're also facing a new scourge. Private, foreign military contractors, as well as foreign fighters and mercenaries. But the African Union has always been seized of these matters because since 1977, we already have a convention on the elimination of mercenaries on the continent. So this is the time to dust off that convention, make it more active, and work with the United Nations Security Council, the European Union Political and Security Committee, to make sure that we get the mercenaries out of our continent. Foreign interference is one thing that our leaders condemned also roundly, and this we will not accept. So, dear Director, let me go back to the question in French. Yes.
So maybe,
Actually,
the gentleman
excuse me,
who had a question
my
from
colleague,
Chad.
I'm asking about the summit to facing terrorism. It was an Egyptian proposal about it.
I didn't even hear what
Did
you
you
said.
discuss about it?
Sorry?
Egyptian has a proposal about the
I think we know.
facing terrorism summit. Did you talk about it? Did you discuss it? Egypt, this proposal, have a proposal for summit, African summit to facing terrorism in Africa this year. Did you discuss about it? Do you have any decision about it?
From what I recall, Egypt proposed in February 2020 the deployment of a special brigade to tackle terrorism, not a summit. The extraordinary summit, I believe, was proposed in February 2020, before COVID, by Angola, the government of Angola. And this is what has now come back to the table, because in 2020, there was no
meeting.
Southern African Development Cooperation mission in Mozambique. And the trend we witnessed in unconstitutional changes of government linked to security were also not present. So it has become more expedient for member states to see the need, which I believe was wholesomely adopted without any reservation. So the summit we hold, and the issues that relate to the special brigade, anti-terrorism brigade, the issues that relate to the deployment of 3,000 AU troops to the Sahel, we now have to open up the consultations with the regional economic communities in the region of the Sahel, particularly the Sahel. And that brings us to ECOWAS and ICAS. I thank you.
Est-ce que tu peux répéter la question sur le Tchad? Attendre pour la traduction, so that you can use it.
I will try to...
No, thank you very much for the question on Chad. I want to assure you that, as you have stated, we are fully supporting the Chadian political transition. Indeed, we welcome the statement of Prime Minister of Chad yesterday at the engagement we had on peace, on the state of peace and security in Africa. And you recall that this morning, as I started, I introduced the topic of complex political situations or transitions. Why are they complex? As you stated in your question, some are facing the onslaught of terrorists and violent extremists, insurrectionists, as we noticed in Chad, rebels, and insurgents. This combination will not be good for any political transition. And that is why we are investing a lot of time, energy, and the little resources we have under what is called the African Union Support Mechanism to Chad. And this is also based on multidimensional needs assessment that our technical team has already undertaken to Chad, to other countries requiring strong support from the African Union Commission when it comes to democratic order. As you realize, it is important that not only countries that have been moved from conflict to post-conflict, we have to do much more to support that. And that's why in 2021, we launched in December the African Union Center for Post-Conflict and Reconstruction and Development in Cairo. We are very pleased with the government of the Arab Republic of Egypt for giving us that opportunity to do more research and push for the implementation of programs. But you know, post-conflict is very expensive. We cannot do it alone as a commission. So we are partnering with the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, with the African Development Bank, and all other international multilateral organizations that can support us. So back to your question, we really commit to supporting Chad in its political transition, and that political transition has also had us with the deployment, as we speak, of 5 experts working in the AU office in N'Djamena to monitor and advise on constitutionalism, the rule of law, elections, security sector reform, and DDR. And that is why we're supporting the engagement of consultations with armed groups that have renounced violence. And I want to assure you that our efforts in Chad will also be replicated in Libya, in other countries that are currently facing difficult political transition. I want to also assure you that we have extended this especially to island states of the continent. It is not just Chad. We are working closely with the Comoros, the Union of Comoros. I met with President Azali yesterday, again, to reconfirm our support for the national dialogue process that is inclusive in that country. I want to assure you that in the next few days after the summit, our team will be visiting Moroni again to assure the government of the Comoros that the African Union is solidly behind them. Political transition means one thing. It leads to more strengthening of democracy, of human rights, of the rule of law, and of constitutionalism. And Africa is already on that step. Last year alone, 2021, the African Union observed 13 of the 16 elections held on our continent by member states. We urge the media to report more of 3 of these 16 countries that held elections where opposition leaders won: Libya, the Gambia, and Cape Verde. Dispensation. Yes, not all is gloomy, just like the chairperson of ECOWAS, Authority of Heads of State and Government, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, said yesterday. It is not all gloomy on the continent, because 16 countries, member states, held elections on time. And not only that, delivered in some cases where opposition won, and we can see visibly improvement in the conduct of elections on our continent. We have done that research. We presented a report in January to the Peace and Security Council on elections in our continent for 2021. And I want to assure you that we will be publishing some of these reports in a more friendly manner with data and information that will show the evidence base for that we are marching on. Yes, we have some setbacks, but the membership of the Union has decided strongly to follow the path of democracy and good governance.
Yes. So I was just confirming with His Excellency how much time he has left. So we'll take 2 more questions. So let me start from this side of the room. 1 question from you and 1 question from you.
Thank you. My name is Aman. I'm from Align Media, Ethiopia. I want to raise 2 questions. The first one is, at the end of your speech, you have said the AU leaders have strongly condemned any foreign interference. So if they could strongly condemn, that means, as to my understanding, there are clear interferences. So can you tell us some of the issues raised inside by the leaders? And my second question is, what has happened recently to the United Arab Emirates by the Houthi militants So now, these days, the issue of cross-border terrorism has become the big threat for the world. So how is the African Union or at the continent seeing this, and what's reaction on this regard? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Noé Ochebodin for Le Monde newspaper. A very short question about the DRC. Are you worried about rumors of a possible coup in Kinshasa?
No, thank you very much. Let me just clarify that until you have the decisions of the Assembly, I won't be privy to giving you the details of what you see. But I want to assure you, like you stated, and I stated in my opening remarks, all leaders condemned the spread of terrorism, violent extremism, radicalization, and the upsurge in unconstitutional changes of government. All leaders without exception. For the transcontinental flow between the Gulf and African countries, particularly in the region of Gulf of Aden and Red Sea, maritime security for us is important. And I want to assure you that we are also monitoring with the member states, because we don't have a mandate across the Gulf, but we have a mandate where it impacts our interests. As you know, terrorism has no boundary. So whether it's the Hutu rebels or it's Al-Qaeda in the whichever part of the world, we want to defend our sovereignty, our territorial integrity, and the unity of our member states. That is our primary golden rule. And that is what we will continue to do without delay. But I want to assure you that we are monitoring, we have mechanisms that are already engaged in this area. We are working, as you saw, as I said earlier, we also have a high representative that is devoted to the Horn of Africa, and of course, the Horn is also very close to the region that you mentioned. But by and large, the impact of migration, the impact of climate-induced insecurity from other parts of the continent, because I've been to some countries in the Horn where you see refugees from Yemen. So you're absolutely right to link the two. And that is what we're doing, engaging with and consulting with our partners in the Gulf Cooperation Council. So we are in touch with the UAE. As you know, the UAE has a lot of interest in the Horn, in many parts of the continent, in terms of investment and trade. And politically, we are also engaging. And in future, I believe in this year, very soon this year, the Afro-Arab Summit will hold. And these are issues that will also be placed on the table. The second question, unfortunately, I don't react to rumors, but I can assure you that whatever trend we are witnessing in our member states, we are monitoring closely, because we have regional analysts who day to day, we have a situation room that is 24/7 that works and monitors these developments around the world. But our principles continue to guide us. As I stated, we are one of the very few intergovernmental bodies in the world that suspend member states and hold them accountable for failures in democratic governance. Any coup or attempted coup will be roundly condemned by the African Union without exception. And this is why we are solidly behind our democratic culture, which is just few decades old, knowing fully well that democracy takes a lot to nurture, to build, and to consolidate. We are building, and we are at the same time strengthening our democratic pillars. And that is what the department has done. And you will recall that if you were at the last summit of the African Union in 2020, February 2020, physical one, I will not be talking about unconstitutional changes of government. Maybe I will have been Commissioner of Political Affairs, Peace and Security, or Political Affairs separate. But today, we have one department which testifies to the integration and the vision, the logic, the philosophy of our heads of state, the conceptual thinking that political governance is linked to the state of peace and security. We can only have sustainable, enduring peace when our polity is stable, is predictable, and is effective. We need more of our systems to deliver the goodies, the public goods for the people. We have also noticed that in some of the countries that have witnessed coups, we have seen popular support. But I want to assure you that any military intervention in governance is misplaced, is ill-advised, and will be totally considered unacceptable and not tolerated by the leadership of the African Union heads of state and government. This is incontrovertible. And this is the most important thing, and I think the key message you should take away from this is that the African Union will not in any way justify whatever the motivation, military takeover of the governance structures of any of our 55 member states. This is the message I want to leave with you, and I really thank you for the opportunity to address you. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.